Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. I am a military veteran who was injured in Afghanistan. I mention this only because it's important to the story. I worked for this company, though calling it a company might be generous. Really, it was just a guy who owned a few businesses and happened to be the richest person in a very small town. Let me explain how I ended up in this situation. I joined the military before even finishing high school, late birthday and all that. Since I've always loved working on things, I chose to become a mechanic. The sign-on bonus was pretty sweet too. During basic training, I only spent money on necessities, so I saved quite a bit. Through advanced training for my MOS, military job, I saved even more. By the time I finished both, I had half my sign-on bonus and almost a full year's pay sitting in my bank account. "What's your plan with all that money?" my drill sergeant asked me one day. "Investing, sir. Stock market, crypto, and paying off my parents' house," I replied. He nodded approvingly. Smart kid. Most of these knuckleheads blow it all on trucks and beer. Through a couple of deployments and the other half of my bonus, the only thing I really spent money on besides necessities was my hot rod. I had a good chunk saved up and invested. Long story short, when I discharged in 2021, I was pretty comfortable even after a nasty divorce. Don't get me wrong, I didn't have stupid money, but between the divorce settlement, splitting up stocks, and anyone who follows crypto knowing how that market exploded and crashed between 2020 and 2023, I did all right. After my divorce, I worked to recover what I lost, then just to keep busy. Like I said, I love being a mechanic and would bounce around wherever I felt like, since a good mechanic can make money anywhere. "You're always welcome to stay," my last boss told me when I left. "Thanks, but I need to keep moving," I said, getting restless again. After about 10 years of this, I decided to set down roots in a small town, thinking it would be nice and quiet. By this point, I was tired of always working on other people's cars and wanted to devote time to my own. I bought a small house and spotted a help wanted sign at the local lube shop. Figured it would be simple work for me and cover my few expenses. When I went to grab an application from the office, I got all kinds of looks from the townies. Being 6'3" inches with long hair and a full sleeve of tattoos since leaving the military tends to have that effect. Most people cross the street instead of walking past me. "You looking for work?" asked the bookkeeper behind the desk. She introduced herself as Linda, eyeing my appearance with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, keeping my tone polite and professional. She noticed I checked the veteran box and put a Y on my application. Later that day, Linda called. "Can you come back in to meet the owner, Mike? He'd like to discuss the position." "Sure. What time?" "He'll be here in an hour if that works for you." I showed up right on time. Mike's eyes widened when he first saw me. But once we started talking, my southern charm won him over. He pulled out a calendar featuring his car collection and tossed it to me. "Name the ones you recognize," he challenged, leaning back in his chair. I pointed to each one. "Let's see. Couple of Mustangs, Ford GT, Bricklin SV1, GTO Judge, Challenger Demon, De Tomaso Pantera, and an MXT. You know the Bricklin?" Mike sat up straight, suddenly interested. "Sure do. Gull wing doors, built in Canada. Pretty rare bird." We chatted cars for a while before he laid out the job offer. "Here's the deal. $100 a day, Monday through Saturday, 8 to 6. No overtime, but you get full day's pay even if we close early. Eat when you can. Sundays off, plus one extra day during the week. Sound good?" "Works for me," I said, shaking his hand. Everything went smoothly for about a year. Then Mike called me into his office one day. "Hey, I need a favor," he said. "Could use you as relief worker for my other lube shops in neighboring towns. $20 extra per day for travel, just covering when guys need days off." "No problem," I agreed. This arrangement worked well for another year until disaster struck. Mike met Rachel at some business conference, and within a month they were married. That's when she started draining his accounts with her gambling habit. The problem started small. One week my paycheck was only $250. When I asked Linda about it, she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "There have been some changes," she said quietly. "You should really talk to Mike about it." I called Mike, and he showed up with Rachel in tow. "Why's my pay short?" I asked. "Bad weather affected business," Mike explained. "We had to close early several days." I might have let it slide, but Rachel jumped in. "It's not fair to pay you for a full day when you don't work the full 10 hours, she snapped. "Ma'am, I'm on a negotiated day rate," I explained calmly. "That's why I don't get paid 19 hours overtime each week." Rachel's face reddened. "That's not how it works anymore. From now on, you get paid for hours worked, nothing else." The next week was brutal, staying late every day for waiting customers, plus covering for a sick coworker on my day off. My paycheck should have been over $800, but came in at $600. I confronted Mike about it. What happened to my pay? That's what we agreed on, 100 a day, he said, not meeting my eyes. I worked 80 hours last week. Rachel stormed in, coffee mug in hand. What's he complaining about now? The fact that I worked 80 hours and only got paid 600, she sneered. You're contracted labor. You agreed to 100 per day. Why would we pay more? I looked at Mike. That how it is? You heard the lady? He mumbled. I went home and tried to rationalize it. The job wasn't hard and it covered my bills. Besides, the only other options in town were assembling sheds or working at the chicken plant. Things got worse the following week. Rachel was screaming at one of my coworkers in front of customers about some supposed OSHA violation, wearing tinted safety glasses. Complete nonsense since our bays faced east-west and we needed the tinted protection from the sun. As co-owner, it's my responsibility to ensure OSHA compliance, she hollered. I shook my head walking in, which was a mistake. Like a shark smelling blood, Rachel turned on me. You got something to say, you overgrown punk? She snarled. Later, I pulled Linda aside. You need to talk to Mike before Rachel's mouth writes checks he can't cash. I just keep the books, Linda replied, hands up. Don't involve me. This went on another year until I hit my breaking point. The day everything changed, I was already in a dark place. I'd just learned my buddy who saved my life in Afghanistan had been killed by a drunk driver. I'm working pit all day, I told the guys. Just let me be. They knew something was wrong. We'd worked together long enough. I never expected to deal with Rachel that day since I was at the furthest shop from their usual haunts, but luck wasn't on my side. Rachel burst into the pit screaming, Mike, look at this disaster! My crime! Having 50 common oil filters neatly stacked on waste drums for easy access, something I'd always done and Mike had never minded. Clean up this pigsty, Mike ordered, like he was talking to some teenager. Today's not the day, Mike, I warned. Move on and take her with you. Rachel exploded. How dare you disrespect us like that? If you don't like it, you're free to leave, Mike added. So I did. The next day, Mike called. Stop by the main store on your way home. I thought he might apologize, figuring the guys had told him about my friend. Instead, he dropped a bomb. You're on 6 months probation, he declared. $50 a day, no travel pay. You serious about this? I asked quietly. Really thought this through? That's when Mike showed his true colors. You're lucky I don't fire you for disrespecting me and Rachel. If I didn't pity you for being a struggling disabled vet, you'd be gone. Something in me snapped. I started laughing. What's so funny? He demanded. I drew myself up to full height, stepping forward like I was about to conduct some old-school military discipline. You should reconsider your life choices and who you go into business with. What, you gonna sue me? Mike scoffed. Go ahead if you can afford it. What's the VA give you, $1,000 a month? We both know how bad you need this job. Suing wasn't my plan, but he'd just kicked off my malicious compliance. That evening, I called a labor lawyer and paid the $3,000 retainer. Started building a case for unsafe work environment, unpaid overtime, and minimum wage violations, all while still working there. The lawyer, an ex-Marine, seemed to catch my drift. Want me to take my time with the paperwork? He asked, a slight grin on his face. If you wouldn't mind, I replied. 6 months later, right as my probation ended, we served them the papers. The process server stuck around to witness what happened next. I should kick your ass, you ungrateful piece of crap, Mike shouted. Rachel was even better. You're ducking fired, you pussy. Bet you weren't even really in the military. The process server caught it all on video. My lawyer added unlawful termination to the suit. It's illegal to fire someone for suing you. The next day, I opened my own lube shop and car wash combo, recruiting my former coworkers with better pay plus commission. They joined the lawsuit, too. 2 years of legal battles followed. Subpoenas for security footage, financial records, sworn testimonies. At mediation, they offered $50,000 to split between 15 of us. That doesn't even cover the overtime, my lawyer pointed out. Then came the game changer. The IRS documents arrived, showing Mike had claimed veteran tax credits for me at all 6 shops, listing me as full-time at $12 per hour. Well, my lawyer said during the next mediation, this is interesting. 20 minutes later, they agreed to our terms. $400,000 in unpaid overtime split 15 ways, all legal fees, $20,000 per shop for unlawful termination, plus back pay for my probation period. Their only condition was a gag order. We signed, got paid, then somehow, and I still don't know how, those tax documents found their way to the right person at the IRS. I sold my shop to the guys for $8,000 each and moved away. 8 months later, I returned to handle an overgrown lawn issue at my unsold house. Found Linda working at a real estate office. "You won't believe what happened," she gushed. "Mike took a plea deal for tax fraud, filed bankruptcy. Rachel ran off with some casino guy." "What happened to Mike's cars?" I asked. "Check the parking lot," she winked. Sure enough, there sat that safety green Bricklin SV1. Turned out Mike had sold his collection cheap, hoping to buy it back after bankruptcy. To this day, I don't know who reported the tax fraud. Maybe some clerk processing the paperwork noticed the discrepancies. Either way, couldn't have happened to more deserving people. The next one is an entitled people story. My name's Javed. I'm 42, and until 6 months ago, the most excitement in my life was coaching my son's Little League team or fixing up our modest fixer-upper on weekends. It started about 6 months ago. We live in a fairly quiet neighborhood in North Carolina, in a modest house with a decent-sized yard. Nothing fancy, but it's ours, and we've put a lot of work into making it a nice place for our kids to grow up. Our street is one of those where most people wave, but don't really know each other beyond superficial greetings at the mailbox. The first time I noticed him was on a Tuesday evening in early March. I was in the garage working on my daughter's bike when I spotted a man just standing at the edge of our property, watching the house. He was maybe in his 30s, average height, with unkempt brown hair and wearing clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in a while. He wasn't doing anything particularly threatening, just watching. When he saw me notice him, he wandered off. "Probably nothing," I told my wife Jenny that night as we were getting ready for bed. "Maybe a new neighbor checking out the area." "Did he say anything to you?" she asked, looking concerned. "No, he just walked away when he saw me looking at him. I'm sure it's fine." 2 days later, he was back. This time, Jenny spotted him peering into our backyard while our kids, Emma, 8, and Jack, 6, were playing on the swing set. When she opened the door to ask if he needed something, he just mumbled something incoherent and walked away. That's when we started getting concerned. Over the next few weeks, his appearances became more frequent. He'd show up at random times, sometimes just standing across the street, other times actually coming onto our property. Each time we'd confront him, he'd leave, but he always came back. He never seemed to have a clear purpose. He didn't try to steal anything or peer into windows at first. He just lingered. I tried reasoning with him once when I spotted him by our mailbox. "Hey man, I don't know what you're looking for, but you're making my family uncomfortable. We'd appreciate it if you'd stop coming around." He just stared at me with glazed eyes and said, "This is where I need to be." Then he walked away, muttering to himself. Up close, I could see his pupils were dilated, and he smelled unwashed. I wondered if he was on drugs or maybe homeless. After that interaction, I called the police for the first time. They came out, took a description, and told me they'd keep an eye out. The officer, a younger guy named Reynolds, suggested the man might be homeless or dealing with mental health issues. "Call us if he comes back and seems threatening," Officer Reynolds said, handing me his card. Not exactly the reassurance I was hoping for. The man disappeared for about a week after that. Just when we thought maybe he'd moved on, he was back, but his behavior had escalated. He started showing up more frequently, sometimes multiple times a day. He'd stand closer to the house, and his mumbling became louder, more agitated. He'd pace back and forth at the edge of our property, occasionally stopping to point at the house or shake his head vigorously as if arguing with someone we couldn't see. One afternoon in April, Jenny was gardening in the front yard while Emma played nearby. The man approached them, getting uncomfortably close. "You don't belong here," he said to Jenny, his voice surprisingly clear compared to his usual mumbling. "You and those kids need to go. This is my place." Jenny grabbed Emma and hurried inside, locking the door behind them. When she called me at work, I could hear the fear in her voice. I left immediately and called the police on my way home. By the time I got there, the man was gone, and a police officer, a different one this time, was taking Jenny's statement. Again, they took the information and said they'd look for him, but since he hadn't actually touched anyone or tried to enter our home, their options were limited. "Document everything," the officer advised. "Get cameras if you don't have them already. Keep a log of when he shows up and what he does." That weekend, I installed security cameras covering every angle of our property. It cost nearly $600, which we really couldn't afford, but Jenny and I agreed it was necessary. I also started keeping a detailed log of every appearance, complete with dates, times, and what he did or said. The cameras caught him 6 more times over the next 2 weeks. Twice, he came up to our windows and peered inside. Once, he actually tried the door handle on our back door. Each time, we called the police. Each time, they'd show up after he was gone, take our statement, and tell us to call again if he returned. I went down to the police station to talk to someone in person, frustrated with the lack of action. The desk sergeant explained that without evidence of a specific threat or a crime being committed, they couldn't do much more than what they were already doing. "But he's trespassing," I argued. "He's scaring my family." "Yes, and we respond every time you call," the sergeant said. "But by the time we get there, he's gone. We can't station an officer at your house 24/7. Keep documenting everything. If he makes specific threats or tries to break in, we can take stronger action." It was like living under siege. Jenny was afraid to let the kids play in the yard. We were all on edge, jumping at every sound. I started working from home as much as possible just to be there. The kids couldn't understand why they had to stay inside on beautiful spring days, or why Mommy and Daddy seemed so worried all the time. Our neighbors noticed the police visits, but seemed reluctant to get involved. One neighbor, Mrs. Patel, did tell us she had seen the man wandering around the neighborhood several times, and had also called the police once when she saw him sleeping in her shed. They came and took him away, she said. But he was back the next day. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon in early May. I was in the backyard with both kids while Jenny was inside making lunch. The man appeared suddenly, coming around the side of the house. Before I could react, he was in our yard walking straight toward my children. "Those aren't your kids," he said, his voice angry. "They need to come with me. This is my house." I put myself between him and my children. "You need to leave right now," I said firmly. "You are trespassing and you're scaring my family." He ignored me, trying to step around me to get to the kids. I blocked him again. "The police are on their way," I lied, hoping to scare him off. Instead of leaving, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a large knife. "Move," he said. "Those aren't your kids." Everything seemed to slow down. I yelled for my kids to run inside, which thankfully they did immediately. The man lunged forward, slashing wildly with the knife. I jumped back, barely avoiding the blade. I'm not a fighter. I've never been in a physical confrontation as an adult. But in that moment, with my family in danger, something clicked. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a garden shovel leaning against the fence, and swung it defensively as he came at me again. The shovel connected with his arm, causing him to drop the knife. But instead of backing off, he charged at me, tackling me to the ground. We struggled, rolling around in the grass. He was surprisingly strong, fueled by whatever delusion had brought him to our home. I managed to get on top of him and pin him down. "Stop! The police are coming!" I shouted, hoping Jenny had called them. He bucked and thrashed beneath me, screaming incoherently about how this was his house, his family. I held him as firmly as I could, terrified of what would happen if he got free. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes before I heard sirens. Jenny must have called 911 as soon as the kids ran inside. The police arrived quickly, pulling the man off me and restraining him. As they put him in the patrol car, Officer Reynolds, who had responded to our first call, explained that they recognized him. His name was Thomas Mercer, and he had a history of mental health issues and had stopped taking his medication. Apparently, our house looked similar to one he had lived in as a child. "You did the right thing," Officer Reynolds told me. "You protected your family without using excessive force." I was shaking too hard to feel any relief. All I could think about was how close he had come to my children. This time, Mercer was arrested and charged with trespassing, assault with a deadly weapon, and making threats. Because of his mental health status, he was committed to a psychiatric facility rather than jail. The court issued a permanent restraining order against him. We later found out he had been living in an abandoned shed about a half-mile from our house. When the police searched it, they found maps of our neighborhood with our house circled, and disturbing journal entries about reclaiming his family. They also found pictures he'd taken of our house, and most disturbingly of Jenny and the kids, obviously taken without their knowledge. The district attorney explained that Mercer would face a psychological evaluation and likely be committed to long-term psychiatric care. Because of his mental state, he probably wouldn't serve prison time, but the goal was to ensure he got the help he needed and wouldn't be able to threaten us or anyone else again. It's been 3 months since the incident. Mercer is still institutionalized, and his doctors say he'll likely remain under supervision for a long time. We've added more security features to our home, better locks, a security system, motion sensor lights, but the biggest challenge has been helping our family feel safe again. Emma had nightmares for weeks. Jack, though he's younger, became anxious about strangers. Jenny jumped at every unexpected sound. And me? I found myself constantly checking the cameras, patrolling the yard before letting the kids out, lying awake at night listening for any unusual sounds. We're all in therapy now. It's helping, slowly. The kids are gradually returning to their normal, carefree selves. Emma has started playing outside again, though she still asks me to check the cameras before she goes out. Jack has stopped having accidents at night, which started after the incident. Jenny has started gardening again, though she keeps her phone in her pocket at all times. And I'm learning to balance vigilance with not letting fear control our lives. The police drive by our house regularly now. Our neighbors, who we barely knew before, have formed an informal watch group. Everyone looks out for each other in a way they didn't before. If there's anything positive that came from this ordeal, it's the reminder of what's truly important. I'd never considered myself particularly brave or strong, but when my family was threatened, I didn't hesitate. I would do anything to protect them. I hope no one else has to go through what we experienced. If you ever find yourself dealing with a similar situation, my advice is to document everything. Report every incident to the police, even if it seems minor, and don't wait to take security measures. It's better to feel like you're overreacting than to wish you had done more. As for us, we're healing. Our home is beginning to feel like a sanctuary again rather than a target. And while I can't say I'm glad this happened, I am grateful for the reminder of how precious my family is and how far I'm willing to go to keep them safe. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Just wanted to share my compliance with you. It's been a few years, but I still am proud of it. Background, I worked in it in a medium-sized company. We were a team of about 20 persons, with always 2 specialists for every topic. For example, server, database and mine, network and firewalls. Due to laws in our country, we had a gentleman's agreement with our company, as Noon could be forced to be on call pretty much 24/7 every 2 weeks, but the company needing exactly that, they paid us about €500 per month and we would be on call, but with less harsh rules. You were supposed to call back in a larger time frame. It wasn't expected that you could start working within a specific frame, etc. The calls were not frequent, so this was okay for us. Every team was called like 3 times a year, so it was decent money for a psychic burden, more than for real work. The problem? I was the new one. So I worked there for several years and my boss just left me out of the agreement. At the beginning it was okay, because I wasn't called and also wasn't able to help immediately. But after 2 years, my higher boss blatantly stated, well, if there is a problem, we'll just call him, to other colleagues and my direct boss when it came to my partner going into vacations or illness. The first problem, as you might expect, I was pissed. And lo and behold, the time came and they needed help from the whole department because there was a computer problem with all systems. The higher boss didn't even have the balls to call me himself. He made one of the other colleagues do it. I answered and it was hard to leave them hanging, but I declined, knowing everyone would have more work with less people. The solution. After being set into such a harsh spot, I chose to solve the problem myself. You don't want me on call? You won't be able to call me. I switched my mobile number, only giving it to my direct partner, who also agreed with it being unfair, like my direct boss. He would simply lie that he didn't have it either if he was asked. Everyone knew I was pissed, so they agreed with my solution. Then I turned off my home phone, which I didn't use anyway, and gave HR the number of my parents, telling them to only contact me if there was a real problem. Nothing just work-related. And then I waited, and waited. The crash out and aftermath. And then my time came. Colleague was out of country on holiday. I had a nice weekend. On Monday I came in and everyone was like, everything crashed on the weekend. Turns out the firewall as main gateway had a network interface going up and down. Noon even had a login expect my colleague and me. They had to get a specialist from the support to help them, which cost them the whole weekend to solve this, meaning critical calculations didn't run as planned. I was immediately called into my boss, unfortunately not the higher one again, office. He instantly promoted me to being on call, no matter the consequences. Everything with HR and the bigger boss would be done afterwards. I just had to make sure I was on call when leaving the building this day. So I went ahead and gave them my number, and after that I was never even questioned about it again. Bonus for me, other departments always were pissed about our free bonus money, and I was the only one who always just went ahead and told everyone I would actually give it up again if I had my personal freedom and space back. I actually prefer my space over the money. Left some years afterwards for a 8 to 16-it job without being in the constant awareness that someone might call. The money might sound great at first, but about €3,000 per year for always having your work in the back of your head just isn't worth it for me. Hope you enjoyed my MC. Have a good one. Edit for clarification. 500 euros a month at about 42% tax rate. It's quite usual to make it simple and just half the initial income, so it would have been around 3,400 euros. Nothing was split, everyone on call got the 500. Anyway, thank you for watching.